I was left for dead. That's how my journey in entrepreneurship started. I left the corporate world and my finance and MBA degrees behind me to share my story. Welcome to That Entrepreneur Show, where resilience meets hustle. Let's build and learn from our guest now.
I take that methodology everywhere I go. I am going to last time, but in order for me to
Here we go. We are back bringing on Matt, who's making major waves in the healthcare field, where he's got something that helps healthcare businesses optimize their revenue cycles and lower their medical billing costs. He's a real entrepreneur at heart. He's also got an app he launched. He's got a lot going on. So, Matt, welcome here on That Entrepreneur Show.
Thank you. Yeah, glad to be on. Glad I could join.
I'm excited. Where are you streaming in with us today?
Del Mar, California, about 20 minutes north of San Diego on the coast. They're on the ocean on the east side. I'm on the ocean on the west side. Sun is out, I assume, in both places.
We've had a little chillier of a day here, to be honest with you. We've got a little wind today. It wasn't I try to, when I'm having these really long days like today, when I have a hour window, I try to go up to the beach for 20 minutes and just walk with my feet to the sand.
Nice.
Not today. The wind's whipping out there, but that's something I do to stay level in entrepreneurship. But to everyone viewing on or tuning in, this is That Entrepreneur Show. Thank you for keeping the show a top 2.5% global show. I appreciate everyone tuning in and our guests joining on. It gives me such pleasure to keep this show going. And today we've got Matt here. He's helped with thousands of physicians and over 50 provider organizations nationwide with a submission of over $4 billion in claims. So there's a lot of lessons learned in entrepreneurship coming through there. Over 24 years of management consulting experience in the healthcare sector. You know a lot now, but you didn't always know everything you did now. What's one piece of advice you can give to any early stage entrepreneur who's just starting?
The first stage of advice I give everybody is I had no idea what I wanted to be when I grew up, when I graduated college. So yeah, I think a lot of kids these days, they stress about this. I have a 14-year-old and a 10-year-old. 14-year-old is already trying to control his future. And it's like, you don't know what's going to be passionate. So I fell into the healthcare sector. I graduated college. I decided to take advice from my dad and go into management consulting. I chose a very focused boutique consulting firm. A bunch of Anderson consulting guys have created it back in the 80s, and it really started to propel it into something special. And I didn't necessarily think of myself as a full-blown risk taker growing up, but what I learned early in my career was I struggle with inefficiencies. And if anyone listening has worked in healthcare, it is loaded with inefficiencies. So as I kind of moved from Stockcamp to Deloitte, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and kind of run around the country trying to fix health system problems, the entrepreneur brain started going, like, why can't we do something different? So at 29, I left a very good job and a partner track at Deloitte to start my first company. Didn't realize in 2007, we were about to head into a massive recession. This is another point I want your entrepreneurs to take part in. Being undercapitalized, or in my case, no capital behind me, and having to find a way to survive really taught me a lot about what it takes to be an entrepreneur. And I think in this day and age, people get very comfortable, right? They raise money, they have time to make mistakes, they start hiring people. But I can tell you, as an entrepreneur who's never been capitalized, who's had to really go out there and build a market and find solutions to sell into that market. And when things go awry, I don't want to end up as a Blockbuster or Kodak. I need to find ways to upsell current clients. And I think that's something that gets missed a lot, is everyone says, I want to be the CEO. I want to be a founder. But as my college coach used to say, do you have the intestinal fortitude to deal with the tough times? And by the way, as an entrepreneurial, you will be loaded with tough times and tough decisions. A lot of relationships were destroyed. If you do take money from friends and family or close folks, that's at risk. So the glamour is there if you have an exit. And I was able to pull this all together, even despite the economic chaos, and get a very good exit for myself and my investors, in 2011. But that could have also gone south had I given up. Absolutely. So you learn a lot about yourself along the way.
That's when I was going into college in 2009. I chose finance as a major, mainly because I thought it would have a high likelihood of me finding a job if I did come out in this big, crazy recession. Here we are again, 10 years after that. Cyclical, right? You learn if you look in the books. But now You're out here making a huge difference. You've been able to scale, as I said in the beginning, over $4 billion in claims. Let's talk more about your current business.
Healthcare is pretty black and white, in my opinion. You have an industry vertical that has costs that are out of control, reimbursements that are declining. Half the dollar now comes from a consumer who could pay or maybe not be able to pay. That's not a good business model. When you have the provider of services and the payer for services and the consumer of services all misaligned, nobody's making an investment in that business, right? So what we learned here at MedEvolve, and this is something I've rebuilt what I had already built years ago, is that why can't I measure every human touch it takes to get a medical claim paid? And if you can understand all of the waste, the avoidable touches that are going in, then you can pinpoint with accuracy where did it occur to begin with?
Love that.
Some of the stats that we look at now, right, is about 65% of all the touches, which is billions of dollars of lost money for healthcare providers, are wasted, right? There are things that should never had to have been looked at. There were mistakes that were made either upstream or they were ineffective people. And when COVID hit and everybody went virtual, people are now working from home. People are not as held accountable. Healthcare money, this is what I tell people, payments come in. It either required a human to get involved or it didn't. Now, we don't like it when humans get involved. We'd ideally like it. All the money comes in, no humans get involved. Life is good. It's not reality. About 40% of all money that comes in does not require human intervention as a baseline. A lot of touches go into this. So MedEvolve's growth really has been building a workflow automation system that tracks all of this information that sits on top of the EMRs, right? It sits on top of these legacy platforms that have never been adequate in identifying waste. They were designed to get a claim out the door and a claim paid. They were never designed to say, is Matt Seefeld effective at his job in the area of the revenue cycle that I've assigned him to work? And that's kind of scary when you look at the impact to healthcare. San Diego, for example, I won't name the system, but it's a health system that I've been a part of now for almost 15 years, just decided to cancel all the Anthem Blue Cross patients. That contract has been torn up because they couldn't come to terms with a fair negotiation. I think I heard 100,000 lives have been impacted by that.
My goodness.
What they're doing is providers feel the only lever they have is to stop seeing certain types of patients that will hurt their small little margin that they still have left. So if you have Medicaid, Medi-Cal, Medicare, Medicare managed care, some commercial plans, if they can't get fair deals, they just stop seeing those patients. So now what happens to those communities? They start consuming resources where they shouldn't be. My twin brother, I have an identical twin. He's an ER doctor. I said, have you started to see a lot more level 1, level 2 visits coming to your emergency room because those individuals don't have primary care doctors? He's like, absolutely. 100% increase. What happens to the hospital? It's a big bill. They can't pay their bill. It becomes a bad debt write-off, the profit and loss. You see where I'm going? There's not a solution out there. It's certainly not with this administration, who seems to be more focused on tariffs than on the healthcare system. And yet you and I and our children and our friends and everybody listening to your show is being negatively impacted by the state of healthcare today. And it's only going to get worse if we can't figure out a way to get margin back in the pockets of providers, to be able to then put fair deals together with payers, to be able to offer services to their community.
You're doing a tremendous service. And I know it's not as easy as an overnight switch, but you're showing that it is possible to reduce this waste. And again, healthcare, as entrepreneurs, a lot of us don't have the best insurance, right? So I speak from personal experience, the challenges I face and everything. So well done on bringing this and to the forefront. I do these podcast information sheets, everyone, because I like to see where the guests can bring value. And something that struck my eye on here: what can Henry Ford and lean manufacturing teach us about revenue cycle management today? Henry Ford, titan of industry, maybe an answer to a later question, but I'd love to hear your analogy on this.
Yeah, as a guy who's had to try to package and resell this simple concept that's in my brain to an industry that has trouble understanding things, I've had to figure out ways to create analogies around this. And if you look at what he did, so he took, the one man build one car, no scale, no way to procure, supply costs at a fair value, right? It's all the things that you think about, like in healthcare. He organized the supply chain, no different than the health system is trying to organize its own chain of command, right? Is a patient is seen or patient is scheduled, they are seen, service is delivered, claim is billed. Hopefully payment comes in. If payment doesn't come in, who collects on payment? Do they actually get the money? Should it be exactly what they got? Right. So how can a guy in the 1900s revolutionize and build the blueprint for common day manufacturing and scalability? And yet if you go to a health system today and you were to ask basic questions to a big health system and say, how many people and touches does it take to get your insurance claims paid? They can't answer that question.
I know.
It's crazy, right? And there's a multi-billion-dollar consulting world out there going in and trying to help these providers, and they can't answer those questions. No, my clients can answer those questions in about 15 seconds now, but it takes this new way of thinking. And so, Henry Ford, to me, incentivizing good work, right? Fair pay, measure everything, fair deals with providers of supply chain, right? It's all the things that would go into building a highly profitable, scalable business. And yet here we are being impacted, every one of us, whether you're trying to find a therapist or I'm trying to find a new primary care doctor. This is insanity. And then let's not even get into all the experimental stuff, right? I do a ton in wellness. I know you do a ton in wellness. Like there's a lot of good things out there that providers and technology companies are trying to offer consumers to better their lives. But it's like, well, is it going to be paid for? Probably not. What's it going to cost you? Will the doctor even accept it? It's scary.
I love all these points. And everyone, I love how you're highlighting, reflecting, tracking everything. I'll give a shout out to the Load Center when I was in the incubator program, fine-tuning my business, getting things right. That's what it's all about, the right KPIs, tracking what you need to. And you highlighted such an important point for entrepreneurs. I want to ask, how do you see this company growing now over the rest of the year?
Yeah, so we've kind of outgrown our minimized capital. So we're in a process of doing a majority recap of the business so that we can finally actually have some time and some room to, I always say, to allow myself to make a mistake or two. Thing with entrepreneurs is it's one thing to take an idea out of your head at 29 years old. It's another thing to then put that into a product or service. In my case, it was the software product. Then it's another thing to go try to sell that with no clients, no branding, right? To a client, which then creates reference. That gets you, I call it like there's a $0 to $5 million revenue, but then there's the how do you go from 5 to 100, right? It actually takes different types of leader. Like I'm way better at that 0 to 5. I don't want to be the guy that takes it to the next level. I'll be a part of that team, but I'll be doing what we're doing right now, right? Go to market strategy, out there presenting, getting excitement, ideation, product innovation. I, as an entrepreneur, really liked taking an idea. And by the way, for your listeners, I know this has been told over the decades. You don't have to create something new. I went and actually created a software solution that sold for a lot of money, but people were already doing it. They just weren't doing it in the best possible way. So don't feel like you have to create the brand new idea, right? First of all, and if there's competition out there, everyone gets worried about, oh my God, there's 10 other vendors. Take that as a compliment that there's other companies out there competing for the same prospects that you guys are. That means that you are on there. If you don't have competition, that's a lonely place to be. Yeah, you don't necessarily want to be on that frontier because you don't know what's going to be at the end of it. So I really would encourage people and also be honest with yourself, right? A lot of people, especially nowadays, they want the glamour of saying, I started a company, I built a company, I sold a company. It takes a tremendous impact on lifestyle. I can tell you, I got sober 7.5 years ago. When we talk later on about mental health, I'll get into all of that. My alcohol consumption was directly related to the level of stress that I had from about 2007 to 2014, when it was my only outlet to deal with fear, all this fear. And now as I look at emotional sobriety, I realize all that fear was created by me, right? It was not created by people around me. But it's a big struggle. Your relationships with your friends, your relationships with your spouses, your relationships with your kids, you're working nights, you're working weekends, and some people I think try to be in that realm when that's not them. And it's, I always tell my kids, it's a lot easier for you to figure out what you don't want to be than for you to try to spend years trying to be something that it turns out you don't want to be. Like find out what you don't want to be early. And don't spend all that time in frustration. Then the stuff that comes to the top, and there'll be very few things that come to the top, then you laser focus on that.
Absolutely light side advice. Thank you for sharing that. And entrepreneurship is certainly not for everyone. And I work an untraditional schedule, right? I'm at my computer the latest 4 a.m., 6 days a week. And then I push it on time block before bed every day. Of course, your nightlife is sacrificed with that. You do lose certain friendships that are only really there in a nightlife capacity, which is what it is, but you got to dial down with your business. And it's something I can resonate with over the last 5 years, especially. It's just been really me and my desk going home for certain activities, see family or like weddings. Those would be my big breaks, but I wouldn't trade it at all. But now, as we're winding down, I do want to ask some trends that will impact how medical practice executives are going to change their businesses now going forward. Maybe how you play a part in that.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing and I'm seeing this, I speak at a lot of healthcare conferences around the country, and I feel like over the last couple of years, the reality of the situation is sinking in greatly. And I think healthcare executives are finally coming to terms with they have to try something extremely different in order to maintain any level of growth and profitability. I see that in the PE firms too, who have been out there buying practices for all those years, who are now sitting there holding a bag of assets that they didn't realize were so bad. And they're like, now what do I do? And it's like, I told you so, But in all fairness, look, the healthcare is a business. You don't control reimbursements the way that we want to. I can go to the grocery store and they can charge me $5 more for eggs, but you can't go charge a customer $5,000 more just because you want to. Insurance companies are not going to play fair. They never have. They never will. Consumer will continue to owe more of the dollar with these high deductible plans. So you have to be reasonable with the consumer and to what you expect up front and payment plans. And you've got to get your costs under control. I'm not going to get into supply chain costs and all that, but I will tell you on the administrative labor cost, if these CEOs and boards and management teams don't understand that 60 to 70% of the touches in their revenue cycle are wasteful and not driving any economic value, and they don't do something about it, they will be irrelevant. And I worry about people ask me to say, is healthcare doomed? And I'm like, well, at some point, somebody has to step in and start normalizing costs, right? It's not happening probably in the next 4 years. But what scares me more about insurance companies, games, AI, reimbursements declining, consumers not being able to pay their bills, especially if we end up in a bad recession, it's actually the apathy of the leadership of these healthcare organizations. And I don't mean that to be insensitive and that they're dumb people, but I have to be honest with you. I'm shocked at some of the indifference and some of the slow decision making or inability to make decisions about new services and new technology that could help really save that business. It takes forever to sell and to really build value in these industries because you're selling to an unsophisticated buyer. And I worry about that for this industry, right? And I'm starting to see people come around a little bit, but I don't know if it's going to be fast enough to really make an impact. And I think the consumer is going to be the one that continues to suffer. Your doctors won't see you anymore. They can't afford to see you anymore. Services are going to be limited. But your insurance companies are going to be playing games and start directing more of the care that they think you should have versus what you actually should have. And I'm not being doom or gloom, but the business is a business. And if you don't have cash flow, there's no margin, there's no mission. So something's got to go. And I think entrepreneurs like me are going to continue to push the horizon line. And I'm not giving up. I still love this industry. I still feel there's a huge opportunity for entrepreneurs in this industry. And I'm not going to let it go, even at 25 years into this career.
I certainly don't think there's any negativity with that. That's realistic of what's going on. I've got here, I typed up in the notes, I got someone to introduce you to who also plays a huge role on the patient advocacy side, the patient voice side against these insurance companies. So Claudia, if you're listening on right now, you're going to get an email after the show at Matt. But Matt, as we wind down, there's something I ask every guest, and I have a feeling it would be Henry Ford. So I'm going to ask for someone else. If you could choose any entrepreneur, dead or alive, to pick their brain, who are you going with?
Man, that's a big question. I got to be honest with you. I'm going to name a couple companies. One is Netflix. And I'll tell you why, because you go from one, they could have sold that, what was $50 million to Blockbuster or something like that. Blockbuster said no. But what I liked about Netflix, what I like about some of these other, Apple, what I like about Amazon is I like the fact that they find new verticals to get into. If you are an entrepreneur and you think that one idea is going to be it for you, it is not. You will have to find ways to augment your growth with it. And what I liked about Netflix is and you're younger than I am. I go from getting a DVD sent to me in a mailbox to streaming movies and shows that they produce as a motion picture company, right? You could say the same thing about Steve Jobs, right? That guy, like his style, the way he hired managers, the way he made sure people he hired were smarter than him so that they could bring value to it. It's those types of personalities that really make a difference. And, this book, Built to Last, if folks haven't read it, read it. I take that methodology everywhere I go. I am going to last time. But in order for me to survive time, I have to make sure that I can put food on the table. And therefore, I have to, guess what? Find new ways to upsell people. In recessions that I experienced from '07 to pretty much 2010, right? When you were still in college, I never would have survived if I didn't ask my current clients, which were few, what else would you buy from me? If I created something, would you buy it? And that's where I started to expand my roadmap, expand I never in a million years would have thought MedEvolve as a company would be having conversations like we are today if I had been stuck in what we were doing a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
Crushing it. You made the pivot everything out there.
Yeah.
You made what came natural, like we alluded to in the beginning. Remember, I was a finance guy in college. While I enjoyed predicting cash flows in certain activities, it also wasn't something I truly loved. So
I hear you.
You give up a paycheck and then you go do what you love. So now, everyone, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to tune in today. I want to thank our guest so much for coming in. Where can we find you online, Matt? And then also, where can we find your app?
Yeah, absolutely. So MedEvolve.com, if people are interested in learning more about what we do on the healthcare software side. My Lifelink is the sober app. It's a community of warriors out there that suffer from emotional, behavioral, and or physical addiction. I do a ton of work in that space, App Store, Google Store. And then just me individually, if people want to connect, hit me up on LinkedIn. It's the easiest way, I think, this day and age to connect, and would love to hear from you. Certainly, if there's listeners that want to collaborate, would love to collaborate.
I love it. Like I said, I've got people in mind just based off your story. And that's the cool thing about this podcast, where oftentimes there's overlap coming in. Everyone, I'm going to go ahead and drop it right here. If you're checking out the video version on the Reels or on the live stream, his website, go check him out. My name is Vincent A. Lancey, and I thank you so much for tuning in today. Remember to subscribe and leave a review if you enjoyed today. And of course, be sure to show some love to our guest. I've got the website right here. Get ready for another great show, again, coming next week. And before we sign off, showing love to our show partner one more time, John Ford. Head to johnford.com or empathyset.com to check out his empathy card set and app to keep you mentally healthy. We're signing off today. Thank you so much once again for taking time to join us here on That Entrepreneur Show.
Great.